choice. Everything is a choice in that sense. I mean, we all understand foundationally that our lives are governed by free will. That is the baseline, is we do have free will. We are also living in a false light matrix, which is in a sense predetermined. So our fate, the fated line that we are born to, we incarnate into this world and we have a fated line. And that fated line will eventuate. It'll happen on cue, which is why witches and crystal gazers can see and scry into the future and see certain outcomes which are predetermined. In that sense, they're predestined. But we can always overwrite the destined program. That's where free will comes into it. You can never have a worse life or a worse incarnation than the one that you have already been born into. So if you have a really bad life, that was what was programmed. That was what actually you had coming in order to balance the books, so to speak, at the soul level. So the worst fate line you have is the one that's predetermined. But the good news, the amazing news, is that you can overwrite that program anytime you choose, including thwarting death, and thwarting the horsemen of the apocalypse. We have that power. The angelic human has superluminal capacity to overwrite any program in the temporal universe. So we're not victims. In that sense, the truth is we are creators, all of us. But in order to become at one with that principle of creator, and then to invoke and to embody and be able to enact and manifest the powers of the creator, we are required to move into phase coherence, absolute frequency alignment and phase coherence with the creator, which is the Atman. So the Atman in that sense is an old Hindu reference, the Atman, but it just describes the eternal principle of the living God, so to speak. And I like to think in terms of God not as being some curiosity hovering about in one or the other of the spheres, but as a living principle, an all-pervading, limitlessly perfect and bountiful and affirmative living principle. And that living principle is always available to us in any corner of the omniverse, wherever we be, wherever we find ourselves, we can align with that living principle, the Atman, the Godhead. And as we move into phase coherence with it, we can transport and transmute and transform any condition, any status, any situation ever, especially within the thrall of the fiction of time. So you speak about how difficult it is to achieve that state. That is true on the one hand. On the other hand, it couldn't be simpler. So again, it's an alpha omega conundrum, because it is this path of least resistance. So it is actually the simplest thing of all, to relinquish false light adherence, to literally release one's indentureship to one's own egoic mind in that sense, which is the false light matrix, the false light cage of reality. We can relinquish it instantaneously, and people do all the time, especially when they are visited by grief, very profound grief or sorrow, or a very harsh accident. It could be a motor accident. It could be something like that, which is very physical and very deeply traumatic and impactful. But those kinds of event horizons in our life, I know your audience agree with me. Everyone listening knows what I'm talking about here. We've all had those moments of sheer grief when we've just learned that a beloved one has died, or when we've been in an accident, had a life-threatening event horizon. It zeroes out the white noise. Those events in our lives zero out the white noise and catalyze everything that is real into an instant moment of now, where we are forced, in that sense, in order to survive the event, we are forced to overcome ourselves. We are forced to learn to overwrite the program. And so in that sense, we're given the tools and the navigation set to know how to navigate forward and to overwrite the destined or fated line and transmute it into a higher outcome. Now, what's exciting about this time, this end of time that we are living through, is that collectively we are now given the benediction of the grace of God, which is also the wave of photonic light that is sweeping through this quadrant of the universe right now as we've moved through the ecliptic plane of the galaxy, 2012, 2020, and now in 24, 25, moving to 30, 32, and then to 46. We are swinging through this photon band of high density vibrational light or vibral light, which is truly the benediction or the grace of God incarnate, manifested in the physical realm. And that those photons are impacting us as we hurtle in the solar system, embeds further into that motion of swinging through the grand procession of the equinox. We are being enlightened from the inside out, literally at the photonic, atomic, molecular, cellular level. Everything's actually being enlightened from within. There is a God spark, a particulate of vibral light that is impacting every cell. And so that's giving us the grace of God, so to speak, at the material level, to be able to remember our divine immanent template or blueprint. The angelic template is being remembered to us because of that. So those of us who are meek enough of heart to be able to receive that benediction of grace as it's impacting us and relinquish and release our hold on the false light aspect or the egoic aspect of self, of life, of so-called reality, we are the ones who are inheriting the earth. Resultantly, it couldn't be more simple and more perfect, which is what I've been not arguing, but I've been postulating for many years now. This simple equation of standing in pure truth, enacting right action in life is all you need to do, because pure truth and right action is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome, always in all ways. That was how I reduced the whole dictum of philosophy and spirituality and alchemy into one sentence. We don't need to get into psycho-intellectual philosophizing and spiritualizing and studying runes and books and codes and symbols and steels and, getting into all of this kind of very enigmatic stuff to try to self-empower and self-improve. All of that is also part of the false light matrix. It's the egoic mind seeking to psycho-intellectually spiritualize. Well, you cannot spiritualize psycho-intellectually. It can only lead you into a labyrinth. Similarly, you can't just use the heart and emotionally feel your way toward baby Jesus or toward Ganesha or whatever bullshit you are manifesting in your own realm of imagining. If you relinquish your own false light adulation or idolatry toward your idea of Jesus on a cross, because that is not Jesus. That is not the man from Nazareth. That is a dead man on a stick. And the idea that you peg your spiritual plasma and your life force toward that Catholic Saturnian icon, that is dangerous, highly destructive. It's what's led us into endless cycles of war and disease and poverty and misery and servitude, enslavement, indentureship. Surely now we want to awaken from within that false light idolatry, civilizational dystopia. It all comes back to the same language. Keep things very simple. Learn to disidentify from idolatry, which is exactly what the Master Jesus urged his followers and disciples to do. It's what all the great prophets and avatars always urged their followers to do. They said, do not follow me. Do not worship me. Do not make that mistake. And yet that's all we seem to have done. But that's because this third-party intervention of priests, which is to say government and the church are the same thing. This notion that the church and the state are separate has always been the biggest confidence trick in history. It's so clear that the church and the state are completely conjoined at the hip. And it's all about midnight masons, Babylonian priesthoods, and these diabolical invisible masters operating from the shadows, conducting and construing how humans are harvested into civilizational wheels or great yugas of the harvest of humanity, the sacrifice of innocence. It's now time to end that cycle, move into the benediction of the living God, the living principle, the living gospel, and we have the power and the means to do that.